right, here's a version of the most recently published Isomorphic keyboard piano overlay. I've got the black keys colored differently so that you can more easily find your way around. And while I didn't like having that before, as it gets closer and closer to the original Halberstadt keyboard underneath, just like as far as the ergonomics are concerned, I think this is not bad. And so, here's C, D, E, F, G, and then here's D flat, here's C sharp, and depending on the context or what you're doing, the one that's the correct enharmonic choice should be the one that's actually closest in a vertical orientation to what you want. So C, D, E, C, D, E flat. You don't have to reach way up here for what would normally, if you're C, D, E flat, and it's pretty available. But C, D, D sharp, C, D, E flat, it's right in between here. I did find, though, that it's just this space in between on the flat section, between the taller, thin sections with a bit of a chamfer that makes them thinner in the center. Even still, it's just a little bit too little wiggle room. I can pretty easily at least rub my finger up against the side one, and then, I guess I'm not super likely to press down the key next to it, but that was enough for me to say, okay, I think I want to widen up the flat parts of the key and make the black keyish sections thinner. And so here is that, and this was not printed with different colors for the black keys, obviously. Oh, and I wanted to say about printing these, I was printing them sideways, and unfortunately, while it may have been slightly more reliable in some ways, if there's any warping in that case, instead of warping up a little bit, so it's not really a big deal if this is just a tiny bit too high or tiny bit too low, instead they warp this way and then rub up against each other. So that was also enough for me to decide, okay, let's get another version going. So here's the one with the wider, thin keys, so they definitely got plenty of room to reach sort of in between the black keys. But I did find that the black key sections, the thinner sections, were maybe a little uncomfortably thin. You can definitely reach them and you can be pretty accurate, but I was thinking, okay, just a little bit wider. So this one has the wide sections twice as wide as the thin sections, at least at the bottom, and then there's the chamfer on the black key section, or the section that's like a black key. Each key has two sections where it's like a white key and one where it's like a black key, and the same for the sharps and the flats. There would be the black key section of this key here, and there would be the white key section of this one here, but it's just not necessary to include it. So instead of a 2-to-1 ratio between the width of the wide and the thin part, I changed it to a 1.5-to-1 ratio, and then I also realized that when pressing in the black keys here, it's pretty much perfect for the one to the left, but for the one to the right, I can't get it all the way down without rubbing my finger on the right of the white key section. You can see it's actually a tiny bit lower. So what that means is I need to make the difference in height, the height change from key to key larger, so that compared to the travel distance, it's less. And each time I push down a key, I'm not going to accidentally hit what's next to it. So now I'm working on the next version. I have one key printed out. That's this one here, where the width is 1.5 times instead of 2 times between the two sections. As you can see, it's also much taller. The bottom, or the lowest note of this version, will not be much higher than the bottom note of the version before it. But as you go higher and higher, the difference between the keys really adds up, and so you end up with some pretty tall keys. And this might be a weight issue, on the black keys at least. So if it is a weight issue for the black keys, then it may very well be time for me to start thinking about an alternative way to get this keyboard playable. It may be replacing keys inside of a keyboard, then I wouldn't have to worry quite so much about the extra weight, but that's a whole engineering problem that I'm not really prepared to tackle, or at least I don't feel prepared to tackle. Maybe I could take apart this keyboard and start reverse engineering the keys and get something that works. Yeah, so that's the update. I think that this version with the differently colored black keys will also look pretty sharp. And by this one, I guess I mean that one. Let me show you what it looks like in CAD. Okay, so here's the new version. I don't know how easy it'll be to tell, but that's a significant difference in height from one key top to the next. So hopefully that'll make it so that when you press down on the thinner part of the white key or the thinner part of the black key, that the key travel distance will be less than the amount it moved, than the difference in height, so that you can press it down without bumping into the adjacent key. I'm looking forward to it being printed, and then hopefully practicing it instead of finding another nitpick and then deciding I need to change it, Wish me luck.